Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I'm Danna. I'm Executive Director at an organization called Dogwood Alliance. This is the 5th stop of the Justice First Tour, which is a tour of 20 cities across 10 states across the southeastern U.S. with the goal of uniting and inspiring a grassroots solidarity movement focused on putting justice at the forefront of the message around all of our work. I want to start with just a moment of silence for Marcus DeVive Peters, who was an unarmed man killed by Richmond police on I-95 on Monday. Can we all just say his name? Marcus DeVive Peters.
Marcus DeVive Peters.
Thanks to Rise Up Sing Out for kicking us off this morning with words and songs of inspiration to fill our hearts as we begin the day of conversation about putting justice at the forefront of our conversation in the South. I want to thank our sponsors for the Justice First Tour stop here in Richmond. The New Alpha Community Development Corporation, Dogwood Alliance, and Sierra Club Ready for 100 are the regional and national partners that are working together to put this tour all across the region. And here in Richmond, I want to give a special shout out to Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, Virginia Union University, the Sierra Club Virginia chapter, the Virginia Civic Engagement Table, Virginia Organizing, First Consulting Alliance, Mothers Out Front, Hampton Roads, United Parents Against Lead, Virginia League of Conservation Voters, Equality Virginia, Virginia Conservation Network, New Virginia Majority, Chesapeake Climate Action Network, BAAD, Blazing Awareness Against Drugs, and last but not least, People Demanding Action. That is a beautiful group of organizations that have come together representing a diverse array of issues and people, all working and fighting for the same thing, justice. I want to just briefly tell how I got to be on this tour. I'm a self-proclaimed tree hugger. The organization that I work for works to protect the forests and communities of the southeastern U.S. from destructive industrial logging practices. And as Mahatma Gandhi said, what we do to the forests of the world is a mirror reflection of what we are doing to ourselves and to each other. It's important for us to lift up our fellow non-human beings in this conversation, the birds, the bees, the bears, the trees. They don't speak human language. They can't vote. They don't own land. And they too are being oppressed. They too are experiencing tremendous injustice. The southeastern U.S. is the world's largest wood-producing region. We have a forest destruction rate from logging that is unmatched anywhere on this planet. And it's not just impacting the birds and the bees and the turtles and the trees, it's also impacting our most vulnerable communities. The rural communities of the South that are on the front lines of some of the highest logging rates on the planet are some of the poorest in our nation, with some of the highest poverty rates, lowest education rates, and highest unemployment rates. Why is this if we're the world's largest wood-producing region? That our communities that are at the ground zero of the logging that's happening are not thriving and prosperous? It's because of the system that we're all fighting is the same system that is controlling resources, that is controlling power, concentrating wealth and decision-making into the hands of a few by destroying the planet and doing it by exploiting the most vulnerable in our society. So when we talk about forests, we're also talking about justice. When we're standing for forests, we're not just standing for trees and birds, we're also standing for people, our fellow human beings. There are two myths that have really started to resonate with me as I've been on this tour with Reverend Leo Woodbury. One is the myth of race. The system has falsely taught us that we are different because of the color of our skin. But we are not. We are all human. The idea of race is a myth. Biologically, it does not exist. The other myth that they perpetuate is that people are separate from nature and that we can dominate nature and manipulate nature solely for our benefit. But what's really happening is that a few people are dominating and destroying nature for their own personal gain. A few people are getting really wealthy off destroying the planet. And it's gotten to the point now where the whole world is at risk. The climate is changing, and the floods are happening. And our forests are a critical part of the solution, reimagining our relationship with nature. Forests pull carbon out of the atmosphere. Increasingly, scientists are recognizing that this is a critical part of slowing climate change. But they do even more than that. Forests also protect us from flooding. And right now, across the southeastern region, there's an acceleration of logging happening, where they are turning old growth, wetland forests along the rivers of the coastal plain into wood pellets. And they're shipping them across the Atlantic to be burned in power stations as an alternative to fossil fuels. And they're calling it renewable and green. But it's the same old system. It's the same old destructive, dirty system. It is not green. It is not renewable. We need a regenerative economy that focuses on life-giving economy that puts humans in relationship with nature in a way that allows our planet to heal. So I'm here today because of this man that I'm about to introduce, Reverend Leo Woodbury. I met him at the People's Climate March last year, where he had mobilized 600 citizens living on the front lines of carbon pollution, other kinds of pollution, and the front lines of experiencing the worst effects of climate change, up to DC to march to demand that decision makers start putting people above profits. And we were there with our forest protection signs, and Reverend Leo insisted that we march with him in the frontline communities. And since that time, I have come to know Reverend Leo as a friend. We've shared stories, we've shared meals, we've shared walks in the woods. I've cried on his shoulder. And he has taught me that if we're going to solve these problems, that we have to put justice at the forefront of our conversation, that we have to be talking about the inequities of resources and power, and we have to be working to change that, whether we're fighting for forests, whether we're fighting for clean energy, whether we're fighting for gun control, whether we're fighting to stop police brutality. We're all fighting for the same thing. So it's my absolute honor to welcome Reverend Leo Woodbury, who is everybody's reverend, and who shows us and models every day what it means to be inclusive. Thank you.